Hello and welcome to All For United WFC.
Good evening and welcome to All For United, the WFC show. Three guests, should I say, before I get my maths wrong. Three guests joining me tonight. I've got Connor, Gareth, and I've also got Barry. Connor, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. I'm trying to, if anyone's seen my Twitter, I'm not feeling great at the moment, so I'm trying to recover for Saturday. I'm hoping to get to Reading, so that's my target return date.
Fair enough. Gareth, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Yeah, not too bad, thanks. And Barry as well, your first show on a Tuesday. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm doing good, thank you. Just trying to keep up, making sure I'm ready to level up with all you guys and all your knowledge.
We try our best. Evening as well to Robert. Good to have you with us. So tonight's show then, obviously we are doing a little bit of everything. We're rounding up the results from the weekend from the WSL and from the Championship. We're going to look at the fight for the WSL title, the fight for the Champions League. We will discuss a little bit on relegation, although I think for me personally, that's probably more or less sealed now. We'll also look at the Championship, so the fight between Bristol and Liverpool for promotion, and again, relegation there as well. And then we will discuss some teams that we are all familiar with from tiers 3, 4, and 5. And again, looking at sort of promotion, relegation. So I'll start then by obviously going into the WSL results from the weekend. Obviously, there was the Conti Cup final played as well. But I think just overall, Connor, I don't know how else to get this graphic if you want to start with our result against Leicester and just sort of talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, it was a weird old game, wasn't it? Because I don't think we were brilliant. Leicester were just quite poor. That's not to take away from our performance, because there were a few good performances in there. Martha Thomas, who I've been raving about for a while, I think she's criminally underrated. I thought she had an excellent game. There was a couple of others, the two fullbacks, Honor and Hannah. I think it just shows, though, that if teams nullify our fullbacks, how much we struggle. So, Honor and Hannah were fantastic again, and it was needed more than anything. I couldn't care less what the scoreline was as long as we got the 3 points again. That was the most important thing, because we'd had a very, very tough February. With just I know we didn't win a game, did we, in Feb? So to get back to winning ways, another clean sheet as well. That was important, because the two centre halves have had a bit of criticism. So yeah, I don't think we were amazing, but I guess you don't really need to be when you're playing a side like Leicester, albeit Leicester have actually looked quite good the last few, kind of 6, 7, 8 games. So Chelsea game aside. So no, it was just good to see us get back to winning ways and another clean sheet as well.
Yeah. Barry, what did you make of that result against Leicester?
Yeah, I've got to say, I for the first time, I sort of slightly disagree with Connor. I actually thought we were really good. I thought the effort levels were there. I mean, where we weren't so great was the final third. Some of the decision making at times I think needed to be a bit better. So that would be what I would be saying if I was being critical. But I mean, I watched back the highlights. I didn't see any need for United to really do much defending. We were a couple of shaky moments, but nothing too spectacular. So I thought we were strong in defence, really strong in midfield, which is helpful considering the number of midfielders we've got. I think the squad that he chose was a good squad. And yes, I think without being amazing in the final third, I thought apart from that, we were really good. We pressed them high. We made sure that they couldn't really breathe too much either. And I think we picked and chose the right moments to do that as well. So I think for the situation we're in, having, like we said, not won in February and coming off the back of a lot of really tough results, that was the perfect game for us, really. And hopefully that will be the catalyst for the run-in. So I was really pleased with it. I was buzzing coming home from that. Really was.
Yeah, I think obviously Gareth, I know you were on the Saturday show, but we sort of discussed it with sort of getting back to winning ways. We said it was important to get back to winning ways. It was good for confidence, as obviously Connor mentioned, a sort of a little bit of a rough February, especially when we've got sort of Reading coming up and West Ham away, 2 difficult games. And I think that we'll talk about that later, but that will really define our season. Good evening as well to Lanzo. We're all doing okay. Connor's a little bit rough, but he's managing effort and commitment to the cause. And yeah, he agrees there, obviously dominant against Leicester. I think the only thing we did say, Gareth, didn't we, was we didn't test the keeper too much, because I know you were talking about the corners and things. And I think when I looked at the stats out there was 8 shots on target out of 23. But do you just want to just reaffirm the point that you were talking about Saturday for those that maybe missed Saturday's show?
Yeah, I think I agree with Connor here. It was really weird, like coming off the back of a 4-0 win. And when we're kind of breaking down the game, I was being relatively critical because I just felt as though from open play, we didn't really create a huge amount at all. The first goal came from open play, but then Leslie's goal and Katie's 2 goals all came from corners. I mean, Russo's was put back in. I think Katie overhit it a bit, put back in by Tooney, and Leslie scored, and obviously the 2 direct from the corner. But aside from that, from open play, didn't really create a lot. And against better sides, that's going to sting us. Against Readings, West Hams, teams like that, it's going to sting. So I feel like we need to just find a little bit of a sharper cutting edge up top. But defensively we did well. I think you can tell that Leicester have a good proportion of their attacking players injured. I think if you said to a Leicester fan who would, what would your starting attack be? It's likely to include Hannah Kane. It's likely to include Siggy in there somewhere. I don't know if Charlie was injured. Or just not in the squad, but she's likely to be there somewhere as well. Lashante Paul injured. So I think you could really tell that Leicester were a side sort of struck with injuries and just didn't seem to be as coherent and cohesive as they had been in the last few weeks. But that being said, the performance is irrelevant when you win 4-0. We won the game and that's all that matters. And like I think Barry said, we can kick on now and take that momentum into some tougher games. But I think Leicester fans don't need to worry too much either. That's not going to define their season. There's still that comfortable buffer to Birmingham, even though they ran Arsenal close.
Yeah, and again here, talking about putting chances away and being dominant, I think as well, and obviously there, like we talked about Saturday, if we didn't score 2 corners, it would have been 2-0. I think this is going to come into play a lot more, like we say, sort of against the better sides, and I don't mean that too disrespectfully, but, likes of your Readings, where we've always struggled to go there. Your likes of your West Hams as well, where again can be a little bit dodgy. Evening to Norman and John. Norman says it doesn't matter how the goals come as long as they come. Agree. Listen, I'd have taken a scrappy 1-0 win personally, but I think again it's just that converting of chances. Really, I think it's got to be improved going forward if possible. I want to move on to the next result. And I'll start with you, Gareth. I'll do it sort of in an order of how it appears on screen. I know we've talked about United, but I'm going to go on to Brighton and Villa. Now, obviously, I don't know if you caught that game or you watched WSL highlights, but looking at that, Brighton have been on a rocky patch, and to only put 1 past Villa, considering they've been flying and doing really well this season, did that maybe surprise you, or do you think they were just more bothered about sort of getting out of that little bit of wobbly form that they have been in?
Yeah, I think when you're in a rough patch of form, you don't really mind how the win comes. You wouldn't mind if it's an own goal off the back of the keeper's head, as long as it goes in and you win the game. And I think that's all really Brighton are going to be concerned about. I think Villa possibly fortunate that there is a side in the league that is considerably worse than them. They're not having perhaps the best start. Their start to the season was really positive, and you kind of thought the under Carla Ward, they were really going to kick on and make improvements from last year. But I think over the course of the season, they've kind of settled into a similar area to last year, just a bit more secure. So, yeah, the summer's going to be interesting for them, because I think after their early season form, it's been a little bit disappointing. But Brighton, yeah, will be glad to kind of be back on track and heading, 3 points in the bag is important. The running for everybody is going to be huge, not just for those teams fighting for the Champions League, but best of the rest is going to be an interesting thing as well.
Yeah, Connor, I'll come to you on that. Obviously, I've left sort of Lanzo's comment on here about he thought it would have been a draw, and I think Villa's form is something like Brighton's form is something like I think they won out of the last 5. They won 2, lost 2, and drew 1. So again, talking about very sort of very patchy. What do you make then? Because they were up there fighting for sort of third and fourth with us, and now they're right down in seventh. Obviously due to resurgence in form from Man City, and Reading also being very consistent as well. What did you make of sort of them and that result? Did you expect it to be more, or you sort of similar way? You thought it maybe be a draw?
I don't really know what to expect from probably Reading to Leicester. You don't really know anymore, because I think I'm just looking at it now. So there's only 9 points ish, 11 between those sides, and you're looking at that kind of mid region of the table. You can't really call it. So I wouldn't say I was surprised. It's a surprise to see maybe Brighton drop off as much as they did. I mean, they can still catch us up. They're only 6 behind, so they could close that gap, even though they shouldn't. But everyone was that. It was when United went down there back in December, that they were ahead of us, I believe, and everyone went there as United fans, going, "We're worried about this." Brighton are playing better than us and everything, and now look how the tables have turned. So it's really weird, Obviously, with Carla Ward at Villa, I think they probably expect a little bit more. Whether they're getting the full back in that, around the club. Obviously, there's conversations around that as well. It's just been a weird old season. I think like you said, though, I think Villa, or Gareth has said it then, I think Villa are very lucky that Birmingham are in the league, because if you had a better team down there as well, you could have 3 or 4 teams fighting for relegation or fighting to avoid relegation, because you've got Villa on 16, Everton are down there on 14, Leicester on 12. If you had another team on kind of 11, 12 points, I said Villa would be in trouble, but they're kind of a bit lucky that Birmingham are down there. Maybe that, I'd never ever say a team doesn't fully try, but maybe that's less motivation for them, because they know they're staying up. Then they're not going to challenge the top 3, so they're kind of in that weird. They're just getting wins. I don't know what the money is, the difference wise, depending on where you finish, but I can't imagine it's a lot between 8th, 9th, and 7th, for example. So yeah, it's one of those games. I wasn't surprised, but yeah, it's really difficult to call from 6th to 11th. I wouldn't want to be doing predictions for those.
Yeah, which brings me on nicely to sort of come to you, Barry, on this. What have you made of the table this year? Because obviously we're discussing here sort of like, the 6th to 9th and it being quite close. But I think for me personally, I think this is probably one of the most competitive WSLs we've seen for recent years. I mean, we've got Brighton down in 7th that are, like Connor said before, 6 points behind us. You think that's 2 wins and they're probably back up there if we slip up against Reading and West Ham. But what have you made of it overall in terms of like the competitiveness of the league this year?
I think it's been really exciting. I mean, last year, obviously, it was still quite exciting because we only missed out on 3rd by the point. That was really close as well. And if I'm brutally honest, before this year, I was really only looking at the areas immediately next to where we were. I wasn't too fussed about what was happening in the rest of the league. But I think having been to quite a few games this year, and seeing, not just here, I sometimes pop off to see Arsenal play as well, because they're just around the corner. So if there's one there, a friend of mine comes with me and we go and watch that. And I think the competitiveness that you see is just showing that actually there's more clubs starting to grow. There's more clubs starting to climb that ladder as well. And that's really important, actually. I think, when you go over to like the men's game, they're constantly talking about the big 6. When you're here in the women's game, you're constantly talking about the big 3. And actually, we're talking about the Women's Super League here. And then the whole point of that should be that the 12 teams are the super teams. They are the best ones in the country. So you would expect that. And I think at the moment, if we're being brutal about it, Birmingham probably it's more of a big 11 at the moment, because Birmingham haven't quite managed to get to that level. I don't know, maybe it's because they haven't got Skinner anymore, and they could have had him. I don't know, maybe. But I think it's competitive, and I love that. I love the fact it's competitive. I love the fact it's tight. It gives us nerves. It gives us something to be worried about. It's the same for all of the other people that are attending. And I think I was having this argument with somebody else earlier on. This is where I think the women's game really does excel. The fact that there is so much emotion involved in it. It's hard to not get carried away with the stories that are being told, with the things that there are that could happen. Birmingham could go on to go and do a complete Great Escape, and wouldn't that be entertaining? I don't think that's likely, but they could. So I think competitiveness-wise, absolutely. And I was with Ian. I think that this is 100% had a draw written all over it, that game against Villa and Brighton. And, they've just nicked the wins. It just goes to show, as you said earlier, if you don't take your chances, somebody else might take theirs, and it could be costly, depending on where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, it was something that I think it was John. Yeah, John did it last Thursday. He did a show with Tom, Gary, and Natalie, and he sort of said, is the top four now bigger than sort of Man United, Arsenal, Chelsea, and City? And I think you could potentially argue. Anybody that saw that show, there was debate on Spurs and Reading and Brighton, and with a little bit of funding and obviously building each year squads and things like that. I think it very well could be. And like you say, you mentioned obviously in the men's game and things like that, but I do believe that it will be a genuine fight and a lot more sort of interesting in the next couple of years, because like we've all discussed, obviously for different reasons, teams investing and things like that. Connor, I'll come to you then on the Arsenal Birmingham result. Now, obviously, myself and Gareth were at a game Sunday, and we saw it, and we saw Arsenal flying. And then all of a sudden, Gareth said to me, "Oh, Birmingham have got 2 back. It's 3-2." And we're sat there like, "Oh, God, please do not make this into a draw." Finished 4-2 eventually. They got a goal of 90th minute, I think it was. But what did you make of that? Because, again, Birmingham took 3 points off Arsenal not too long ago.
Yeah, again, it goes back to the unpredictability of the league. I mean, not going to lie, Birmingham weren't in that game really at all. It went Arsenal were 3-0 up, and I think I did actually turn it off because I thought there's literally no point in watching this anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if Arsenal get a couple. And then I saw they pulled 1 back, so I thought, okay, I'll flick it back on, see what's going on. 4 minutes later, they've got 2 back, and the whole atmosphere around the ground completely, as it would, completely flipped. And Birmingham had 1 or 2 chances shortly after the second goal. So they could. They need 1 chance, 1 corner, 1 dodgy mistake, and they've got a leveler, and then they just hang on for that point. But, ultimately, it came through in the end. From an Arsenal point of view, the quality in the end, they just did what top teams do. They kept the ball away from Birmingham, tired them out, because Birmingham then obviously had the hopes up, started sprinting for every ball. Arsenal just kept it away from them, winning free kicks and played the clock down, and obviously got a goal on the break in stoppage time as well. But again, like I said, it just shows that you could be, I think in previous years, Arsenal go 2-3-0 up and it's game over. Like complete. I know obviously they went on to win, but it's just completely game over. Now it's not as easy as that. We've seen it with United this season. We've dropped points where we've thought we've won. We've gone 1 or 2-0 up and we've thought that's it, game over. And we've dropped points as well. So it just shows the unpredictability of it, because to go away to Arsenal are a really weird team. I must just end on this, actually. Arsenal is such a weird team because they're so good, yet they're capable of just being very average as well. Like, don't get me wrong, they're a fantastic side. But, you mentioned how the drop points to Birmingham and earlier in the season. We seem to have to, we seem to be able to do quite well against them. Obviously, we knocked them out. The Conte should have beaten them in the league. Didn't do too bad. And, we were on our bad run earlier in the season as well. Not to mention previous seasons. Arsenal's just a strange team. They're absolutely world class, but could also have 5-10 minute spells of just being very, very average, which is very strange.
Yeah, Gareth, I'm going to bring you in on this. Obviously, I'll throw a couple of comments in as well. I don't know if you want to talk about them. Norman talks about he was surprised that Birmingham actually scored against Arsenal. We've got hoping for comebacks, but Arsenal squad was too strong. We've got sort of the coasting attitude of, letting Birmingham back into it. And then obviously similar to what Connor was saying here about Arsenal, 2 ends of the spectrum. But what did you make on that? Or is there anything you want to maybe add to some of those comments as well?
Yeah, I mean, I completely disagree with the fact that I wanted there to be some sort of comeback. I did not. Don't want Birmingham picking up any more points than they've already got. I think it's just interesting that Arsenal have lost 1 game this year in the league. Birmingham have won 1 game in the year in the league this year, and it was the meeting between the 2 of them at St Andrews. Arsenal, I think it's really easy to kind of look at them and say, "Oh, that they're inconsistent." I mean, they've scored 42 goals and conceded 10. Now, I mean, Chelsea have conceded 6, but have only scored 30. The race between them two, I don't think is really what people expected. I think if you ask people which 2 teams are going to push for the league at the start of the season, people would have kind of said Chelsea and City probably. Just kind of looking at the players that they brought in and stuff like that. Do we all agree it's Chelsea's title to lose? No, I don't. I don't agree with that. I think if you look at the title at the moment, Arsenal are 8 points clear. I mean, Chelsea do have 3 games in hand, but both of those sides are capable of dropping some pretty kind of dodgy points. Chelsea have us to play, but the running for Arsenal seems a bit more simple. Brighton, Spurs, Leicester, Everton, Villa, and West Ham. So yeah, I think we can nick something from Chelsea, and then that kind of really puts them on a level pegging. So yeah, I genuinely can't call it. I said kind of months ago that I thought Arsenal would be title favourites. I still think they probably are. And there's no kind of real reason for that. I just think that they will kind of pull it out the bag when it comes to it. But I said kind of before the game that you look at that bench and it was just absolute filth. Like there's no way that you can't imagine playing against a team where there's some tired legs. So okay, well fine, we'll bring Caitlin Ford on, or bring Tobin Heath on, or it's disgusting. So yeah. What Jonas has done, kind of remember it's his first season as well. We've said with Mark Skinner that it takes time for a new coach to go and get their ideas across, and this is Jonas's first season there. So yeah, I mean he's kind of taking the team from a sort of more solid foundation than United were. But if this is the first season of his new ideas, then next season is going to be pretty scary. I guess the thing for them is that they were disappointed with their Champions League campaign this year. And they want to kind of go one better than that next year.
Yeah. And just before I bring up sort of the run-ins for each team, I'll let you finish off, Barry, with Tottenham and Reading. There's a lot of comments on Twitter saying, how did that end 0-0? And I think, again, from watching the highlights, I did wonder that myself. But a result that nonetheless does us a favour, because I think, it keeps them to sort of at bay. But what did you make of that game then?
Well, I couldn't quite believe it. As Connor will tell you on Friday, my little topic was let's have a little look at the running and see whether or not we are going to squeak into top 3 or not. And Connor brought that up, Spurs as well. And the first game, I absolutely had Spurs down to win that. There was no part of me that thought that Reading were going to do anything other than lose that game. Yeah, Spurs had more chances, they had more possession, they had everything that really you could want to have as the attacking team, and somehow they haven't managed to score. But is that a key theme? You look at us and what we were saying as well. We had a lot of their possession. The stats I would imagine would be pretty similar for us in the game against Leicester. The difference is that we managed to put 4 away, and we're fantastic at corners. So I think that's the thing, and it comes back to what we were saying about the competitiveness of the league. Is that ultimately nothing can be taken for granted. We were just talking about Birmingham just then. Since we walloped them 5-0, all of their matches have been really close. They haven't had very many in February and March that have been like massive defeats. They had the loss to Spurs, to Leicester, and they had a man sent off, a woman sent off rather. So it's constant competitiveness in this league, and I think that you can't take anything for granted. I know that Connor and I both said United are going to win all their games up to Chelsea, and it all comes down to them. But it's anybody's at the moment. It really, really could be. You just cannot take any game for granted, and if you do, you end up with the sort of situation that Arsenal are in, because the last time Birmingham won, I think, was against them 2-0. So what's going to happen? Nobody knows. That's why we've got to watch it and find out. It's where the fun is.
Absolutely. Well, talking of fun, we're going to discuss the race then for third and the sort of Champions League spots. Gareth, I'll start with you. Obviously, I've got Spurs running there, so we'll do it sort of club by club for those that are in the running for it. Where is it going to be won and lost in terms of sort of that for Tottenham? I mean, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal, and Chelsea again is enough for me to sit here and say I could probably say that's them done. But it's not as straightforward as that, is it? As we well know, Everton and Leicester, you'd expect them to pick up points as well. But what are you making of that?
It's nasty, that, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's a filthy running. I'd expect them to drop points against City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Chelsea. Whether they kind of get anything from those 4, I wouldn't bet against them. Maybe picking up a point in one of the home games. for us, ideally in the City game, but wouldn't be surprised there is a point to be won there. What we've seen from Spurs this year is that they're a difficult side to break down. They're not an easy side to score goals against. I mean, we managed it at their place, but for a lot of sides, it's really difficult to break them down. But then they also generally don't seem to score too many either. If you look at like a lot of the Spurs games, they're going to kind of be 1-0 wins, 2-1, 2-0. They don't kind of score many, but they don't concede many either. Like I think if you look at the league, they've scored 19 goals and conceded 11. So we're ahead of them on goal difference at the moment, and that could be key coming into the end of the season. I would expect them to beat Villa, Everton, possibly Leicester. The Leicester game, I don't know, it's difficult to call. Leicester dumped them out of the FA Cup pretty convincingly. So, yeah, I expect them to pick up some points, but like you say, I think that run-in of playing the big three in 4 of those 7 games is going to be a little bit too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Connor, I'm going to let you add your thoughts, and then I'm going to move on to another team. Obviously, Gareth's talked there sort of about that, and lots of comments as well. I don't know if you want to put any up on screen or have a chat about them, but I'll let you chat on sort of Spurs running there.
Yeah, I mean, I will just say as well, when we spoke about this on Friday, I'm currently 3 for 3 on my my little predictor that I made because I had Arsenal and United both to win and Spurs Reading to be a draw. So if you want some advice on predictions, no, I think so. I've got Spurs. I've actually got Spurs beating City. So if I'm carry on with 100% record, obviously that would help United out wholly because I actually think we're going to drop points of somewhere along the line. Obviously we'll get back to that when you've got United's running. Yeah. I agree with Gareth. Spurs are not in contention for me. I think they'll miss out by 5 or 6 points because I think they'll lose both Chelsea games. I can't see. They'll probably lose the Arsenal game, even though I've got that down as a draw. I think they'll probably drop points at Everton as well because I just think under new management, I think Everton still a poor side relatively, but I just don't know towards the end of the season. And like Gareth said there, the Leicester game's no given. So yeah, I wouldn't even count Spurs for the top 3. I think they'll drop away. But contrary to that, what I said earlier, you can't predict it. If they go and beat City and Chelsea and Arsenal, those 3 games in a row, then we need to be looking over our shoulder a little bit and going, oh, Christ, they might be in this running as well. But no, I hope they go and beat City. But after that, they can lose to the other London sides.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because you mentioned Everton there, and obviously for me, I still think Everton are down there and could potentially get dragged, if maybe not they already are, could potentially be dragged further down. Everton-Leicester this weekend is a massive game, a win for Leicester, and closing that gap between Leicester are only 2 points behind Everton and Everton have got games in hand, but Leicester closing that gap on Everton and Villa, and suddenly, you're looking at over your shoulder. Barry, I'll come to you then on Man City's running, which looks like that. Obviously, 8 games, couple of difficult ones in there for them. For me, the likes of Reading, West Ham, Reading twice, West Ham, Brighton as well are all capable of causing an upset. What do you think that's going to be then for them? Because obviously one of us out of, sort of this top 4 has to lose out. Is it going to be Man City for you? Or do you think it could potentially be either ourselves or, Chelsea or Arsenal, which is quite unlikely?
Well, I mean, spoiler alert, I've said all along, but I think we are going to get 3rd. I do. I think, we're going to be just above City. But as it was on Friday, I said that this game, the City Spurs game, is huge. I think that needs to be a draw. I think if those 2 can draw, that gives us the opportunity to just pull that a little bit further away. Obviously, we'll have, hopefully, fingers crossed, touch would have beaten Reading by that point. And so therefore we'll be 8 points clear, that draw, another game down. And I think that just then gives us that buffer to go on and be confident and to play in the way that we do. Honestly, other than that, I see City pretty much picking up 3 points in every single game they've got there. I think they're going to finish strong. They started poorly. They've got some of their injuries coming back. They're going to be buoyed by the fact they won the Conti Cup final as well. So there's going to be a lot in there. Spurs drawing to Reading has given us a bit of a wake up, and I don't know that could well be a walkover there as well. If that's the case, I still have us down as getting third by 2 points. So fingers crossed on that one. But I don't envisage any major problems. If Birmingham have managed to come back a bit, maybe the Leicester game might be, a bit more tasty. But other than that, I don't really envisage any problems for City there. I think that Spurs game is key.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think the Spurs game is probably the biggest one for me. Potentially the Reading games as well. I think in an ideal world, being biased, I'd say can they draw Reading twice and Man City, and then the ball's in our court. But obviously that's not how it works. Gareth, I'm going to get your thoughts on Man City's running, because I know you said to me, and we had a conversation, that even when they had all those injuries, that once they get those players back, they'll probably be our biggest rival for third. It's proving so. So do you want to discuss that, and then we'll move on to another lot of fixtures?
Yeah, I mean, it is in our hands anyway. I wouldn't be surprised if they get 24 out of 24 points from that. The form they're in great form. Ian said it in the comments. They're in good form. They just look super difficult to break down at the moment. Aside from I think they lost a game recently, but I think they're going to be buoyed by the Conti Cup win. They've got kind of a fully fit squad now. I think their issues from earlier on in the season are gone. So yeah, I think they'll get a really good glut of points from there. They may drop sort of 2 or 3, but yeah, there's like 24 possible points, and I think they'll score 20 or more.
Yeah. Again, just reading the comments, a lot of people saying that they don't see City dropping many points. I certainly think it's going to be close. Again, they seem to have got the injuries back sort of at the right time, I suppose, if there is a right time. And like you said, you mentioned the Conti Cup. I didn't for 1 minute, for some reason, think that they would beat Chelsea. I thought Chelsea had that wrapped up, but I think, you saw they won that quite comfortably in the end. Much to my surprise, certainly, like I say, didn't expect that. Chelsea have been very good this year, quite dominant, and seem to be sort of, again, flying in there. Got then the Arsenal running. Connor, I'll come to you on that there. 6 games now. I don't know if you've got any thoughts in terms of the league title, whether you're thinking Arsenal, and obviously we've got to get through Chelsea's fixtures as well. But I think, to me, maybe that they should be looking to pick up, well, at least 15 points from that for me. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so on my little predictor, I've got them winning all of them, bar Spurs, which I've put as a draw just purely because Spurs are hard to break down. That's not to say that Arsenal won't turn them over. They could do, but I think they'll drop points somewhere, and I think it'll be that Spurs game. Other than that, I think it'll just be a formality for the rest of them. I think, like Gareth said earlier, you're looking at Arsenal's bench in games where it's tight, and if they're, some tired legs, their bench is just a joke. So yeah, the players they can bring on. So I wouldn't envisage them. I think as well, because I haven't got Arsenal winning the title, I've got Chelsea, because I think Chelsea will win all of theirs bar the last one, which obviously is against United. Slightly biased, I know, but I think Arsenal's last game of the season is obviously, I think it's West Ham, isn't it? I don't know whether that's away or at home actually. I've got it down as away. You've got it down as home, so one of us is right or wrong here.
Go on.
But yeah, no, I just think you're looking at that last game of the season. West Ham for them, you'd think that's an easier game. Whereas if they go to the last game of the season, you think the pressure's on Chelsea really, because they've obviously got us. We could be fighting for third. So we've got a lot to play for. Arsenal at West Ham, the pressure will be off. So yeah, I can't see them dropping any other points other than the Spurs game, purely because it's a North London derby, and anything can happen in a derby as well.
It is away, you're right. Typing error there. Yeah, spot on again. Barry, your thoughts on Arsenal's running, and then we'll move on to Chelsea.
Well, I can make this nice and quick for you, this one. I totally agree with everything Connor said there. It's going to be a draw against Spurs, and the other games, they're probably going to smash them. So that's it. Yeah. He said it all on that one.
That's it. Short but sweet.
That's me.
In that case, then we will get on to Chelsea. So, again, another team fighting for the title. Gareth, I don't know if you want to give your predictions on Chelsea, whether you think they're title favourites. Obviously, we've just discussed Arsenal as well. But here are the Chelsea fixtures. What do you make of that?
I think it's a more difficult run-in than Arsenal have. I think, if we're looking at Spurs as being a potential place for Arsenal to drop points, well, Chelsea have got to play them twice. West Ham also capable of picking up points, I think, against Chelsea. At Kingsmeadow, be difficult, but I wouldn't put it past them. Sorry, that's not at Kingsmeadow, it's at Dagenham. So at Dagenham, again, wouldn't put it past them. And obviously United going down to Kingsmeadow last game of the season, could genuinely define where the title goes. So, yeah, I think they have a tougher run in than Arsenal, and I think that will show. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if we see Chelsea winning all of those games, then coming down to the last game of the season, where whoever scores more points in that game between Chelsea and Arsenal will win the title. So, yeah, I think it's going to be difficult, but I think Arsenal are still favourites. If you give me the option between having points on the board or games in hand, I'm always going to choose points on the board. So, I think that's going to kind of be Chelsea's downfall is the fact that Arsenal have got those points and they are kind of playing catch up. But again, if they win the title, I wouldn't be surprised. But I think Arsenal will just edge it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I said Arsenal at the start of the season, and I do feel like you said, I think points on the board, it just adds to the pressure for Chelsea, knowing that if they slip up, that, it sort of could be game over. And I would really love if the title was down to the last game, if we went to Kingsmeadow and stopped them winning the title. And I know a few people have talked about that. That would be just, I don't know. Fun is probably not the right word. That would be like quality. Like that's up there with one of the best things that you could ask for this season. I think just because some of their fans are a little bit, let's say, wallies on Twitter. So I think they deserve that just because of everything they give us stick-wise. Connor, our games. Are we going to get that third spot?
Yeah, I mean, I've got it going to us by 1 point, but we would need a draw on the last game against Chelsea on my little prediction I've got going. So I don't want that to be the case. I want us to have it wrapped up before that Chelsea game because I don't want us going there needing anything because it's going to be very tough, especially if they're going for the title. So either or, I want either Chelsea to have the title wrapped up by then so they don't really care about the last game, or we have third wrapped up by then because, City's last game's away at Reading. Ours obviously is at Chelsea. You could decide that there's so much disruption in that mix. But yeah, I can see us winning. I don't know because I've got us down as drawing to West Ham just because it's 4 days after the Reading game, which is going to take a lot out of the players. We don't have that much rotation at the moment, particularly in defensive midfield and in centre half. So if we get one more injury to them while Aoife and Ladd or whoever is still out, we could be in trouble. So yeah, I think we may drop points at West Ham, but other than that, the only other question mark I had was the Everton game, purely because of the occasion. I think if I was at Lee, I wouldn't think anything of it, but because it's Old Trafford, is that going to play on the players' minds a little bit of nerves? Much bigger crowd, expected there. It's Old Trafford, it's a much bigger pitch. Is that going to be play on the players' mind? I don't know. So that's the only other question mark I'd have. But the rest of them, you'd expect wins out of all those.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though because as well, obviously you talked about Old Trafford. Yes, we did play there last year, but with no fans. So like you say, obviously we don't know how many tickets have been sold, but if you look at it from that point of view, it's a different kettle of fish with fans, isn't it? Big stadium, lots of noise, packed out. I'm going to move on to the Championship, so I'll read out the results before we talk about sort of the top two teams. Sheffield United beat Watford 4-0. Durham beat Blackburn 2-1. Bristol put 3 past Lewis. Coventry picked up a win against Crystal Palace. Liverpool dropped points. They drew London City Lionesses, and Sunderland beat Charlton 2-0. Barry, I'm going to start with you, and obviously, like I mentioned at the start of the show, we're just going to discuss the top two teams. We've got Liverpool and Bristol. both sort of looking to, I'd say, gain promotion, although Bristol are 7 points behind, so it becomes difficult. What have you made of the Championship? Because again, another league that's all of a sudden sort of become very, very competitive, hasn't it, this year, especially in stepped up. More teams going full time. What have you made of it then?
Well, yeah, I mean, you said it again. Absolutely, it's more competitive, and I think that there's again. I heard John mention this a while ago, but there's so many stories to be told all the way across women's football at the moment. So everything you just said, and the first thing I'm going to say is the bottom. Coventry United. They're only 7 points off of potentially not getting relegated as well, because they're in 12th, 7 behind there, and I think those 7, it's equal in the relegation battle as it is in the promotion battle. I think the most annoying thing of it all is that Liverpool are top. That's really ultimately all that ever enters my head when I look at that table, is that they're coming back. And although that's nice insofar as hopefully we can humiliate them again, it's never good for the soul seeing Liverpool sitting at the top of the league, if I'm brutally honest. So that's the Man United coming out of me. But you're absolutely right. And I think what I love about the Championship here is that there's so many teams there that, like, ultimately you wouldn't have thought would be in the Championship. I mean, just some of those names. London City Lionesses. Where's their men's team? They don't exist that I've heard of. Durham. I'm not expecting that. That's just a really long journey up the A1 as far as I was thinking. And it's not. There they are in the Championship. Luz, you said them as well. I think it's really nice to see that you've got these sorts of names and these sort of teams that are in there, because it just goes to show that football is wider than just the 92 teams that we all know and love within the league and even within the conference. So for me, I think it's just nice to see the diversity and the fact that even at the Championship level, that there still is that competitiveness. I think, Liverpool are coming up. I would imagine that seems to be what's going to happen. But I would say don't write London City off either, because they're only 3 behind Bristol. So, there's still a chance that it might well not be them who finishes second. But I do think we're looking at Liverpool coming up and annoying us once again.
It's weird because I must be the only United fan that's been screaming since the start of the season. I actually want Liverpool to come up purely because I want that rivalry back. Because one, I'm sick of playing Man City every single week. And I just want another team. I want another rival, because I know that, fans of before this season and whatever say that Durham are a rival, but I can't get on board with that. They're not for me. So I wouldn't mind seeing Liverpool come up. It would be quite funny if they bottle it from there. But, and to be fair, for selfish reasons, Bristol coming up wouldn't be too bad for me, because it's not that far from my house. So it wouldn't be too far of an away for me. But no, the one thing I just wanted to say about the Championship is it's almost proof that that league needs more teams, because look at the gaps between the points difference. There's not a lot, bar in the bottom 2. Look at 10th to 3rd. There's only 2 or 3 points per place, so you can jump 4, 5, 6 places within a couple of games. So I think that just screams out to me. There's a lot of teams. I know we're going to get to it in a minute, but there's a lot of teams in Tier 3, particularly with men's clubs connections, that are really, really pushing for the Championship. And if they carry on with that format of 12 teams, it's not going to work, because you're going to have so many teams in Tier 3 that are Championship worthy that are just going to get stuck in that cycle. So yeah, it's really good for the league. Like I said, I wouldn't mind seeing Liverpool or Bristol come up. It's a shame to see Sheffield actually drop away, because they were up there kind of towards the start of the season and they fell away. Obviously Durham I don't want coming up, just purely because it's a 4.5 hour journey for me out. So I'm quite happy to see them not coming up either.
Yeah, absolutely. Gareth, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to add in the fixtures. Obviously, Barry talked about before about not ruling London City Lionesses out as well. I've not actually put their fixtures on a graphic, but I have got Liverpool here and I have got Bristol. That's Liverpool's running. I don't know if you want to talk on them in terms of how you think that's going to go, whether they're going to run away with it. Obviously, with that cushion as well, they can afford to slip up for a couple of games. But what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, for there to be a 7-point swing, they're going to need to slip up 3 times, one of them being against Bristol. So I just can't see it happening, really. I think They'll pick up points against Sheffield. I think they'll beat Sheffield United. I think they'll beat Lewis. And then I can't see them losing twice to Charlton. And then I think that's going to be the title kind of wrapped up. I think genuinely they could probably win it against Bristol City on the 3rd of April. I think if we're going to see a 7-point swing, it's actually going to be kind of the other end of the table. Because I know we've not got these as a graphic, but I think if you look at Coventry's running compared to Watford, Coventry could really go on a charge and could put a string of games together. So I think if we're going to see that 7-point swing that will be needed, it's going to be from Coventry actually catching Watford rather than from Bristol catching Liverpool. But yeah, I think that game there, like Bristol have got some tough games. Watford are going to really desperately want points. London City are going to kind of be there or thereabouts, and like I say, we could see Liverpool wrap that title up on the 3rd of April, so less than a month away.
Yeah, just to answer the question there, Championship, there's one team comes up automatically. There's no playoff. It's something that we've had discussions on this probably for at least 2 seasons now. In terms of a playoff, there used to be when it was WSL 2. There was kind of a little playoff, and that was a few years back when sort of it ended up as Bristol and Yeovil coming up and Everton as well, things like that. But it does need improving. Obviously, Gareth, you talked there, Bristol have got games there that are, again, quite tough. And I think, like you say, that 7-point gap just maybe is a little bit of a stretch there as well. What I'm going to do, Barry, we're going to go on to sort of the National League now. And I believe, you've been going to Stevenage now for a few times this season. So do you just want to talk to us on Stevenage, sort of, a little bit of everything? Obviously, your thoughts on it, how well they're doing. Obviously they got the win at the weekend. Still down near the bottom, fighting to stay up. But Stevenage, then talk to me about Stevenage women this year.
It was a really interesting one. I can't claim to have sat here and said to myself, I'm going to go and find somewhere else to go and watch my women's football immediately. But obviously it was through meeting Connor and John that they mentioned the fact that you guys go off and try and support your local teams as well. And I thought actually that's quite a nice thing to do. So I got a rather wonderful spreadsheet sent through to me with every single women's team in the entirety of the country. Where their home games are, all of that sort of stuff. And after looking through all of that stuff, I just decided, let's go and have a look at the team that's right on my doorstep. And so that's literally what you do, isn't it? And, the thing that I always say, I think, when I'm talking about any women's football team at the moment, is just the passion and the desire and the effort and the determination and just the clean football that's being played. There's no theatrics, there's no messing around, there's no egos or anything like that. It's literally about the love of the game. And it just comes across in absolute bucket loads in any women's football match that I've watched so far. And that's what you saw from Stevenage. And I really felt for them because you can see they're trying really hard. They were incredibly unlucky in some of the matches that they've had lately. They're up against Billericay was the first game that I went to watch. They were second, Billericay. Hashtag look like they're going to win that. I still can't get my head around the fact there's a football team called Hashtag. I feel like we've hit social media peak now. There's nowhere else we can go with this. But they're really unlucky. They were 0-0. The goalkeeper had worked really hard for Stevenage, Grace Brooks. And they ended up losing from a corner and a header. So it was a real shame. They just missed out on that one. Then they just missed out at Wimbledon. And they've had a few where they were just missing out. And it was away to Norwich that they finally managed to nick a little win, 2-1. And that's really sort of helped them out now. We're in a position where we're actually starting to fight. We're actually starting to see that the great escape could be possible. And you guys have mentioned a lot about how close teams are at the moment. There's 13 teams in the Women's National League, South East Division 1, which I think probably needs a shorter title, if I'm brutally honest. And the team at the bottom is Kent Football United, who we just beat at the weekend 3-0. They've got 5 points. From that point on, you've got 14, which is Stevenage. They're level with Norwich on 14, who are 2 behind Harlow on 16. And at that point, out of those 13 teams, you've got 4 teams that are going down, which is just something that I find it blows my mind every time somebody tells me that. But just above them on 17 points is Enfield Town. So there's a 3-point difference as we go into this running. And Stevenage have got some games. They've got to play hashtag, which, to be honest, they've lost 7-0 both times they've played hashtag this season. So a bit worried about that one. But apart from that, the running is reasonable. There's some games there that they could get those wins from. Especially the fact they've got to play Kent football again. So I feel like Stevenage have got a good chance of making a great escape. But I suppose my big takeaways, as I say, from that league is it's a real worry that there's 4 teams coming down. I mean, I can't see how that's good for the league. And I feel like maybe there is some talk about league restructuring across the divisions below the Championship that they need to start thinking of a little bit more. Even if that was a case of, as Connor mentioned, perhaps making some of the top 2 leagues a little bit bigger and doing something there, and then that might make it a little bit easier. But I would say there's been some fantastic players as well. And Stevenage have been unlucky to have had a few injuries. The goalkeeper dislocated their shoulder in the game against Wimbledon, so we've had a different goalkeeper come in, Tia Aldroyd, and she's done exceptionally well. And it's just been really nice seeing some of these guys playing just with smiles on their faces, enjoying it. I find it quite humorous because being in the stands, a lot of the fans get looked at funny if they swear whilst they're singing songs. You should hear some of the language that comes down off the pitch. It's amazing. It's like, oh, go on, girls. They're loving it. So I just love it. I love the passion. I love the fact, and this is local football. And if you're getting that at Tier 4 in the women's game, we just need to celebrate it more. And I think today, on International Women's Day of all days, today's the day to just say, if you're one of those who's not off watching women's football, why not? Because once you get that emotion, once you get that connection with the team and wanting to see them do well, it's entertainment beyond anything you could ever want to see, really. And I don't understand why any person would not want to go and watch it. So I'm really pleased. I'm looking forward to going and seeing them next week. It's brilliant that the Stevenage game as the Man United game has moved to Saturday, because it means I can then go and watch the Stevenage on Sunday. And then the week after that, they're in the County Cup final for the 7th season in a row. They won it the previous 6. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that'll be 7 out of 7.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that's brilliant, though. Obviously, we started off watching local sides, and it was something, obviously, myself, John, Connor, Gareth, Ben, Natalie, we all sort of had a conversation and said, is this something we can look to push, really, as football fans? And I think it's great that you've sort of taken to it and you're enjoying it, because, for those that maybe don't want international football or want to go to a game, your local club benefits from the income and the support and the exposure. And you mentioned there, obviously, you've enjoyed it and it's been very welcoming. Is there any other players you want to shout out? Obviously, you mentioned a couple there, but is there anybody that maybe sticks out that we can, sort of tag in this afterwards when we put the show back out that deserves a mention?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few that I've sort of tagged with player of the matches. The Stevenage, the official Twitter handle, gave Jodie Southby the player of the match for the previous game. I gave it to Tia Aldroyd because, like I say, 1-0 up, she made some absolutely fantastic saves that really kept Borough ahead, which then gave them the opportunity to go on and obviously extend the lead. But there's been some great ones. Lucy Webster, our captain, fabulous. She's one of those defenders that can maraud forward and carries that ball with her. She really leads the team by example. She's calm and composed at the back. I would absolutely definitely give her a shout out. Bellinger on the right or the left, depending which side she goes. She's got the ability to take on players and knock the ball in. Chloe Gunn, she's been superb. Couple of goals in the last game. She worked superbly from the back, and it's both from corners, the goals that she scored. And Amy Makewell as well. I think she's got real potential up at the top as well. Grace Brooks, as I mentioned, the goalie, she was fantastic before she was injured. But fair play to them all. They just work so hard, and I think deep down it's just painful seeing the level of effort that's being put in by people that's just not being appreciated as much as it could be. And I think ultimately that's what's driving me on to get them all. So, all of them really. They're just little superstars, and I just want more people to see it.
Absolutely. And I know obviously when you sort of tweet some things and we retweet them and things like that, I know there's a lot of players and players' parents and the club that have jumped on it, and they do appreciate it. So I think my message, and I'm sure you'd agree, Barry, is obviously if you can watch your local side, it might be midweek. Like I said, England might be playing, or whichever national teams you all follow. Get down. 100%, you will not regret it. I know obviously I don't need to sort of speak for Gareth and Connor, but I know you've both enjoyed sort of local sides this year. Gareth, I'm going to bring you in actually just before Connor talks, because you've got, I think you had something to mention, didn't you, on hashtag that are in the same league, and then obviously Liverpool, Feds, and Newcastle.
A few things. First of all, I love hashtag as a club. I think what they're doing and the way they're doing it for non-league football in the men's side of the game and for women's football in general is fantastic. Like, we talk about attendances in the women's game, and we kind of look, the Conti Cup final had several, quite a few empty seats, but hashtag stream their games on YouTube. And the game a couple of weeks ago against Harlow, 26,000 views. Last month against Billericay, 71,000 views.
Wow.
So, in terms of like attendances, like people are watching them, and they're really bringing kind of eyes to the women's game, and they're bringing eyes to the game in non-league. I know they kind of originally from Spencer and from a kind of FIFA YouTube channel, but they're way more than that now. And I think, people can look at the name and go, well, hashtag what? Where's that? Well, my response to that would be, find me where Arsenal is on a map of London. So yeah, I think they're a great club doing great things, and I think a lot of clubs can kind of look at the coverage that they provide, and kind of seek to try and replicate that. There are clubs that stream on Facebook, on TikTok, and all kinds of places like that. And I think the more you can do to get eyes on what you're doing, the better. The other thing I just want to kind of touch on the National League Division 1 North. And we'll kind of touch more on this at some point. We'll kind of go into depth with FC. We'll get someone from there on, and we'll do a show or something. But first of all, the relegation battle there is incredible. Like, genuinely could be any of about 5 or 6 different sides go down. So that's really, really one to watch out. For me, what really strikes me about that league is the top. Now, like, you look at that league and you go, okay, cool. Well, Feds are top at the moment on 39 points, played 14, won 13, lost once. Newcastle a second, having played 14, won 12, drawn 1. Them two teams are genuinely just going toe to toe, week in, week out. Feds got to the semi-final of the National League Cup, which includes Tier 3. They lost in that at the weekend. But like, that title race is fantastic, and it genuinely could come down to the last game of the season, as could the relegation race, which is a concern because FC play Feds away on the last game of the season. So kind of want that title for them wrapped up by then, so that they kind of ease off and don't necessarily go all in. But these leagues have like genuine competition, like at the top, at the bottom, all the way up and down the league. And it was at the start of the season when we were kind of just looking for games to go to, and you were like, oh, FC are playing, so come along. And we kind of went and we watched them on the Astro, and just just look at it. It's crazy. You look at Barnsley, Chester, Bradford, FC, Chorley are in trouble there. If people go on a run of form, Stockport could get dragged into that relegation battle with 3 teams going down. So it's insane. And obviously Feds and Leeds and Newcastle really kind of tearing away from everyone else. But like I say, we kind of went down for pre-season for something to do. And what I really like about football at this tier is just how kind of close knit it all feels. Like there'll be 100 or so people there, and you'll recognize the majority of people, and you'll say hello to a lot of people, and it just feels like it feels like something completely different. It's not the same as going to watch a WSL game where you'll kind of go in and you'll watch the game and John's here with his Sunderland.
Bigging up the rivals. I'm not happy, John.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
It's just that kind of community feel that I think has been there previously in women's football, but obviously as women's football grows, which is what we want, you're going to lose that connection to players and stuff. We can still definitely get that, but from down here. And the interesting thing is, people say the team.
Rachel Derbyshire, formerly of Chorley and Manchester City development team as well. So, doing very well, aren't they, Feds? They're flying. That leads me nicely then onto Connor. I know you've got a couple of teams. I don't know which one you want to start with. Obviously, West Brom, you had Kerry on the show last week. Just the Hawthorns. Obviously, you've got links with Stourbridge as well. So I'll hand the stage over to you.
Yeah, okay. I'll start with Stourbridge, and obviously, as people may know, they're Tier 5 at the moment. The game at the weekend was another cup competition. There's a lot of cups. I think is people who follow the lower leagues, kind of Tier 4 downward, you'll realise how many cup competitions there actually are. I think it was the League Cup at the weekend. There's also a County Cup. That was the FA Cup. There's so many cups, and obviously the league as well. So Stourbridge won it again at the weekend to their local rivals, Lye. Came from behind as well. I think from what I've heard from people that were there, Lye did pretty much everything they could to time waste. They went one goal up quite early on and just every trick in the book to delay the game and to keep it going as long as possible and get to full time. But two brilliant goals. Millie Rogers again. People when me and John talk about Stourbridge, she's just absolutely exceptional. Runs the channels very well and a top quality striker. So back on the score sheet, got us level. And Karen Allen, first goal for the club. What a time to get your first goal to send Stourbridge into the semi-finals. So yeah, and I've seen some of the pictures and the videos of the bench. People, Andy Fisher and Mike Harris have been on this channel. You know what they're like. The passion. You talk about that. Straight on the pitch, Jose Mourinho-esque running down the touchline there. So. Brilliant to see Stourbridge kicking on. Obviously, people who might not know, Stourbridge's main, obviously, aim this year is promotion. They've put a lot of work in. They're a very well organised and well-run club. So there's 3 or 4 teams. Lichfield are up there. Sutton Coldfield are up there. There's a few teams that can challenge. So if you're looking for a tough, title race, if you want to call it that, look at Tier 5, the league Stourbridge are in. Because like I said, you've got Lichfield and Sutton. There's 1 point between 3 teams should Stourbridge win their games in hand as well, and only 1 go up. So you've got 3 teams there, and they've all got to play each other as well. So those games, when they come around, are going to be mightily important. So yeah, good to see Stourbridge get another win. I said semi-final of the Cup, hopefully to go along with the league win and promotion as well. And the other team was just West Brom, just purely down to obviously the connection that you mentioned Kerry there. She was on the channel last Wednesday. Obviously, they had a historic game for them at the weekend, playing at the Hawthorns. 2-0 win over Derby, which, I don't know if you were doing predictions, whether people would have predicted that or what. But Doug Moore, again, on the score sheet, absolutely fantastic striker, the amount of goals she scored this season. And Evie Gallop as well coming on. But the one thing I will just say about West Brom, if you speak to people in and around, we speak to a lot of people around kind of the Midlands clubs, and you speak to anyone who's involved there, I think they're seriously a club to watch out for next season. The squad that they are building, the academy they've got there, I wouldn't be surprised if you really see them push on next year for a promotion place, because the team that they're building is unbelievable. You're looking at some of the defenders, Hannah George in there, Ashley Brown, the goalkeeper, Bastock as well. Obviously, we mentioned Kerry Walklett. Moving forward, you've got people like Shannon Stamps moving forward, and like I mentioned there with Doug Moore as well. They've got some absolutely unbelievable players. So just keep an eye on them, because I think next season, they're much closer with the men's club. There's a lot of investment going into them. They've got a brilliant manager and a brilliant setup as well. So yeah, just keep an eye on them next year to make a push for the championship. Obviously, it's a bit difficult in that league, as we spoke about before, because you can win the league and not go up because of the playoffs that then happen with the Southern Division. But yeah, just keep an eye on West Brom because they're seriously making moves for next season. And just quickly before I wrap up, if you've not seen it, go and check out on the West Brom main Twitter. They did a behind the scenes thing from the game of the Hawthorns. Absolutely fantastically produced, captured, and everything like that. And I tweeted somebody earlier that to get new fans into the sport, that's what it needs. It was brilliantly put together. It's a little short 5-minute video of kind of behind the scenes. It's got all the goals in there as well. And I just thought that was brilliant and worth showing that as well.
Absolutely. I wonder if they've taken inspiration from any of our vlogs. No, I'm just kidding. Fair play. Barry, I know you had one more point to make before we end the show, so we'll let you do that and then we'll wrap it up there.
No problems. Yeah, it's just there was a couple of things that I had forgotten based on what we were just talking about that Stevenage earlier on, and there was just 2 other players to shout out as well, which was first of all Dion Manning. When she came on, she really made a big difference in the game at the weekend, and she's been a good striker. And I also wanted to send our best wishes to a young girl called Mercer. That was her surname. She potentially did a ACL the other day as well, which wasn't the most pleasant thing to watch as she came off on the stretcher. And the upsetting thing about that is that she'd done her ACL in the other leg a while ago as well. So we just want to send best wishes to her. But I think the last thing I just wanted to mention, because it's been playing on my mind all day really, was a little bit about International Women's Day, as we'd said, and the fact that the theme for it this year is break the bias. And one of the things I've noticed is the criminal, I think, way in which some clubs treat their women's team in terms of fairness. And I'm talking about just silly little things like trying to find the fixtures or trying to find where they're playing, where you go to get your ticket information, or even something as simple as just actually updating the results on their websites. So I just really wanted to end by just saying, if we're going to break the bias in football, the football clubs have got to do better. They've got to be in a position where they can do the simple things that they would do for the men's team as well. It really shouldn't be an issue. You shouldn't be looking at a website that tells you there's no results for the last 12 games purely because there wasn't anybody to upgrade it. Because to be honest with you, even if you're the chairman of the club, somebody should be doing that. That's the very bare minimum that people should be doing. So yeah, put it together. And let's do what we can to help out.
Absolutely, yeah. Really important message, that. And I think it happens all over. I'm not going to go into it in detail now. We'll do a show on this. But I think in terms of like equality and opportunities and things like that, there is a lot. Obviously, you gave some references there. I was reading earlier today, there's been sort of issues at Stoke City with sort of, staff member leaving under a cloud and things being a little bit sort of patchy and not great, and it's all too common. It shouldn't be happening. Things do need doing, and like I say, it is something we'll talk about equality and things like that and do a show on it. I want to thank the three of you for joining me. Thank you to everybody that's tuned in for all the comments as well. Tomorrow there is the Development Squad Cup final versus Birmingham. It is on the FA Player. It starts at 6 p.m. UK time, so anybody that wants to watch that, you're going to need a VPN if you are not in the UK. I probably shouldn't say that, but I just have. That will be one way you can tune in. Not endorsing anything else like that. I'm going to leave it there. But yeah, for those that are UK based, get on the FA Player. Johnny's back on Thursday. We've got Fans Forum and the Anthony's predictions on Friday. Saturday is match day, and there'll be content, and myself and Benny are going to do the match day review. And Sunday we have got another episode of Teammates for you. So another busy week. I will wrap it there, and thank you everyone for tuning in.